As Sharon said, my name is, well, actually, I've got a video to do this next part, so Dan, if you wouldn't mind.
All right, gang, my friends. Yes, it's that time again. Hello. Hello. All right. Well, hello, all my friends. Tis I. My name is Alex. My name is Alex. My name is Alex. My name is Alex. I don't have a place large enough to keep all my food. Welcome to New Life Church. It's great to see you, all of you. Welcome to my garden. Shh, don't tell anyone. I just realised I haven't told you my name. My name is Alex. What do you think I should do?
Now, I didn't do all of that for you. Well, I made that version of that video for you, but I didn't go to all of those places to say, hello, my name is Alex, just for you. For those of you who don't know, I'm a writer, editor, and trainer, and the church employs me to create the children's work resources that happen in all the rooms around us as the adults do their thing in here. And part of that is to create videos, to do storytelling, to help children learn memory verses, and to do introductory videos like that too. So if you're a parent and you've seen your child wave and say hello to a strange man, me, that is why, because they see me every week. Some people know me as Alex from the telly or Jesus' helper. But that is what we do in the children's work, and that's what I do here. But when I am not being a writer, editor, and trainer and saying, hello, my name is Alex on videos, I am a massive show-off. I love performing, I love singing and dancing and acting. I help to run a theatre group. And here I am doing some various musicals in some of my guises. I'm a tango singer, and I'm a debt collector. In the middle, I'm Jesus. I'm wearing my Jesus t-shirt today, I just realized. And also, I should say, quick plug, I'm directing a version of Sister Act, which is going on in October. And this is why my hair is like this, because I'm playing a 1970s gangster. But if you want to come along to see Sister Act, then do see me later. When I am not making videos, when I am not showing off on stage, I am a massive fan of the Eurovision Song Contest. Thank you, everyone. I know you're all fans too. See, the UK has fallen on hard times of late, so I thought I'd give you some pictures of times when things were better. Now, I'm such a big fan of the Eurovision Song Contest that even my Christmas tree is Eurovision themed. There it is in all its glory, flags of more than 50 European nations, all hand-stitched by me on felt. It seemed a good idea at the time, but when you're trying to sew a tiny 7-pointed star on a very small flag of Australia, you start to question your life choices. Now, I bring up Eurovision partly because I love it and I think everyone should watch it, but also because we saw him earlier because Cliff Richard was also in the Eurovision Song Contest. There he is, Cliff, 1968. And there's some fans of Cliff down here. And I bring him up not because of his Eurovision exploits, but because Cliff Richard plays a part in me becoming a Christian. It seems an unlikely and slightly uncool thing to say, but it's true. It's not this era Cliff Richard, it was Cliff Richard 20 years later. I grew up in a Christian household. My family took me to church, and I saw faith in action with my family as I grew up. And I made little decisions towards Jesus as I grew. But one thing happened to me that made me realize that I hadn't made that faith my own. I hadn't decided for myself to follow Jesus. And that's when I was watching a Cliff Richard video. Now, I was by no means a cool teenager. I was 12 at this point, but I was not so uncool that I owned my own Cliff Richard videos. They were my mum's. She is less of an enamored with him now, but she used to love him. And so I was watching this song that Cliff Richard was singing. It was called Thief in the Night. And the lyrics went, like a thief in the night he will come. There will be nowhere else you can run. You can fall with the night, or you can rise with the sun. And I realized that if Jesus came now, I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen to me. So I decided that this was the time that I was going to say yes to Jesus. So I went to find my mum, and we said a prayer, and that was it. I was a Christian, and you may think that being scared into the kingdom is not the most constructive way of going about this. But, 36 years later, I'm still here. I tell you this story because I wonder if you had a similar experience to me. Not that you were scared by a 1960s pop star, but that you became a Christian while you were a child, before the age of 18. Let's have a game of hands up. Who became a Christian in here before they were 18? There's quite a lot of hands in here. And you know what? That bears out some of the statistics around the church as a whole, because it's quite difficult to put your finger right on it. But between 75 and 80% of people in churches today became a Christian before they were 18. So, Alex, you might say, surely that means we should spend 75 to 80% of our resources on children's and youth work. And I could say, well, that appears to be where the harvest is, but I couldn't possibly comment. But children's and youth ministry is so important to the growth of our family here together. However, there is a more concerning statistic that I want to share with you, and that is that 50% of the children and young people who are in churches will not be there by the time they get to adulthood. 50% of those who are in there, up there, over there, they won't last in their faith into adulthood. I don't tell you that to stress you out. I tell you that to say, don't panic. There are things that we can do as a church family that will turn that statistic around. My topic today is discipling families, but as I was thinking and praying about what I wanted to say here and what God wanted to say to us, I thought, no, it's much more like being a church family. All of us together. At the risk of having another out-of-date reference, we are all in this together. And there are two things that I'd love you to take away from today. That the church family as a whole has a part to play in the spiritual development and the upbringing of all the children and young people in our community. And if you are a parent or carer, you do not have to do all of that upbringing on your own. There are a few passages in the Bible that talk about children and how we should reach out to them and tell them about who Jesus is. If you look at Psalm 78, it says this: I will give instruction and explain the mystery of what happened long ago. These are the things we learned from our ancestors, and we will tell them to the next generation. We won't keep secret the great and glorious deeds and the mighty miracles of the Lord. Now, initially, I was going to focus on that passage, but I'm actually going to turn to a different one. Perhaps the most famous passage of Jesus and children. And it's from Mark chapter 10, starting at verse 13. I will let you find that in your Bibles if you would like to. I'll just point out that the CEV is the contemporary English version. It's the one that we use in children's work because to do memory verses and to tell Bible stories, because it was a translation that was written with a lower reading age. So it's easier for children to get into stories. So, I have brought my glasses because I can't read this, encroaching age. So here is the passage. Some people brought their children to Jesus so that he could bless them by placing his hands on them. But the disciples told the people to stop bothering them. When Jesus saw this, he became angry and said, "Let the children come to me. Don't try to stop them. People like these children belong to the kingdom of heaven. I promise you that you cannot get into God's kingdom unless you accept it in the way a child does." Then Jesus took the children in his arms and he blessed them. This is our memory verse, actually, for children. So the children are learning some signs. Jesus took the children in his arms and blessed them by placing his hands on them. There are lots of ways that we can explore this Bible. So I can't see you, I'll take those off. Lots of ways we can explore this Bible story, but first we're going to look at it most superficially. And that is this: what does Jesus think of children? Well, parents bring their children to Jesus and the disciples stop them. I wonder why the disciples stop the children coming to Jesus. Maybe they think that the children aren't worth Jesus' time. Maybe they think that we've got a lot to do and we've got to move on and these children are just going to get in the way. Maybe they think that it's a little bit shameful for Jesus to be seen with children. Who's going to take him seriously if he's messing around with kids? But what is Jesus' response? He gets angry with the disciples. In other translations, it says he rebukes the disciples. Can you imagine being there and seeing Jesus getting angry with his friends because they are stopping children from coming to him? And if we think about the other people that Jesus engages with, who some, the society, others around them might deem unworthy or a waste of time or a waste of space. It's those people who have skin diseases. It's those people who are outsiders. It's those people who are foreigners. It's women. It's people who have led a terrible life. Tax collectors and sinners. Jesus deems all of these people worthy of his time, of his love, and his blessing. And Jesus here too deems these children worthy of his time, of his love, and his blessing. So, as we think about how we disciple families and children and young people, and we strive to be more like Jesus, we need to remember that children and young people are worthy of our time, of our love, and our blessing, because that's what Jesus showed us. Now, when I've been working in children's and youth work for about 30 years as a volunteer, maybe 25 as a professional. And a while ago, this phrase was all over the place in children's and youth work. It takes a village, whole village, to raise a child. Now, rather shamefully, it was always called an African proverb, as if the whole of Africa was just the same. So I think we can be a bit more specific. In Uganda, there are people who say, a child does not grow up only in a single house. There are some tribes and people groups in Tanzania who go a little bit further and they say, regardless of the child's biological parents, its upbringing belongs to the village. Now, in the West, I think just because we've spread out and we no longer often live near our families. My mum and dad, they live near Blackpool. That's about 3.25 hours away. My brother and his family live in the Lake District. That's about 4 hours drive away. We somehow just shrink ourselves down and we forget that there is a network of people who can help us. And sometimes we just try and do it ourselves. But if you're a parent or carer, you are not alone in this. Even if your family lives miles away across a sea in a different continent, you are not alone. Because remember, the whole church has a part to play in the spiritual development and the upbringing of the children and young people in it. And if you're a parent and carer, you do not have to do all of this on your own. But how we go about telling the great and glorious deeds to children, maybe we should think about that a little bit. And there are a couple of things, a couple of pictures which are quite unhelpful. And so I'm going to show you to them now. Sometimes we feel that children and young people are like empty cups. And if we manage to pour enough Christian stuff into them, ta-da, we've got a finished Christian child. But children are not like empty cups. And sometimes we think children are like Lego kits. I do apologize, I stole these bricks from Rocket's group. Sometimes if we think we have all the bricks that we need, and if we put them together in the right way, we will get a finished Christian child. But children are not like Lego kits. Or these two examples are children are very passive in that, and we do all the work. We do stuff at children and young people. It's almost as if God is over here and the child is over there, and we stand in the middle and we receive from God what we think the child needs to hear, and we regurgitate it at the child in the hope that some of it sticks. When what we really need to do when we're working with children and young people, either at home or in our groups here, is step back and let the child and God and the child meet face to face. We can create an environment where this can happen, but we are not the arbiters of what children and young people can receive from God. We can walk with them, sure, and we should be walking with them all the way through our lives. Because children have an inbuilt spirituality. There's a book which is well worth reading if you want to find more about this. It's called Children's Spirituality by Dr. Rebecca Nye. She's done a lot of work around how children's faith develop. And she says in her book that children have an innate spirituality. It's built in. God put it in there as he created them in their mother's womb. And we don't have to do anything to ignite this. Children are already able to have a relationship with God. She describes children's spirituality in 3 different ways. I'm just going to look at the last one, if you don't mind, Dan. So she describes it as being like a child, because children are not adults. I'm sorry if that sounds obvious, but children are not adults, and so they don't approach faith in the same way. A child's spirituality doesn't conform to the things that we think it might do. It sounds like babble. If you've ever tried to talk to a toddler that isn't yours, it's almost impossible to understand what they're saying. And the same is true of spirituality. It's not a straight line. It matters to the child, and we can squash it. It's vulnerable. So imagine you have children, if you don't. If you do have children, it's not a hard imagine. Imagine you're trying to get all your children in a car to church, and there's one of them walking up the driveway in somebody else's shoes. There's another one you're trying to strap into a car seat, and they've gone rigid, and they won't bend in the middle so you can get their belt across. And it's at this point that a child will ask you a question. Maybe like this question here. Who would win in a fight, Jesus or Spider-Man? And your response to this might be, this is not the time to be asking stupid questions. We need to get to church. Tim will be mad with us if we're late. So just get in the car seat and let's go to church. But think more carefully about what this question means. What is behind this question? Well, at church and at home, a child will have learned that Jesus is powerful. Jesus heals. He can walk on water. He calms a storm. He brings people back to life. And they might have seen a superhero movie, maybe a Spider-Man one, and they can see that superheroes are powerful. So in their head, they're trying to mash these things together and decide, well, what does this tell me about Jesus? Who is Jesus? How powerful is he? Where does his power come from? Can he shoot web from his hands? I don't think he can. Well, I don't think it's impossible for Jesus. It's an interesting theological question. But what children are doing, they're playing with all these ideas that they're getting from all these different sources. This is what a child's spirituality looks like as they act it out. So I've got a few suggestions for you here. Children try things out. They give things a go. They interrogate the text. They ask questions of what is going on. They're open to new spiritual and faith revelation. They're emotional about stories. They get upset when Jesus dies. They're shocked when the man who buys the pearl in the parable sells everything, including his own house. They draw stories together. They start to piece together. Well, you told me this about Jesus last week. I discovered this about Jesus this week. How does that smash together? They play with stories, and they question why. And yes, they theologize for themselves, because theology is not just an adult occupation. After all, theology is just God words. Theos, logos, God's words. So they're thinking God's words. They're talking about God's words. They're writing down God's words. They're playing with God's words. Because I think this saying is quite useful for us here. If you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. If you give children the right answer to a question, they might be satisfied for a while. And if we keep giving children the right answers, all we're doing is giving them fish. They're not doing any of it for themselves. And what we might create is a Sunday school superstar. Those are the children. I was one of those, thank you very much. And whenever somebody asked a question, I knew the answer. But facts are not faith. So, if we're trying to help children stick in faith into adulthood, what we need to do is teach them to fish, is teach them the tools that they will need to engage with the Bible and meet with God for themselves. And that's what we're trying to do in our children's groups as well. We're trying to give children the tools to ask the questions, to do all of those things like interrogate and be open and be emotional about things. And that's the way that we help children's and young people's faith stick into adulthood, is to provide a place for their relationship with Jesus to grow, for them to start trusting Jesus. Now, if you're excited about that, if you think this is a great thing, then we need you. You should join one of the children's works teams. Because we got literally hundreds of children, and they're desperate for people to come and journey with them. Now, it's exciting, and yes, it's going to be frustrating, and it's hard work, but sometimes what ministry isn't hard work? And the wonderful people who come and play their instruments here and lead us in worship, they practice and they practice and they practice. And as children's workers and young people's workers, because that's what we all are, we need to go and do that and work hard and tell children and young people the great and glorious deeds of the Lord. Now, if you think that's exciting, then get in there, because these children and young people will blow your spiritual socks off. The amount of times I've been in one of those rooms and the children have said something so profound and so amazing that I have never thought of. They have taught me so many new things, and my faith has grown because I've been in there helping their faith to grow. So if you think that's an exciting thing, then go and see Sonia, come and see me, and we'll get you cleared through our recruitment system and we'll get you on the rota. Because we are not messing about. That was my alternative title for this. But quickly, back to our Bible story. And here is a cartoon of what is going on. Jesus and the children there. When Jesus tells his disciples and those listening about who will get into the kingdom of God, he says this: I promise you that you cannot get into God's kingdom unless you accept it in the way a child does. But we've already discovered how children engage with the kingdom of God and how they accept and work on what God is telling to them. They do all of these things. So if we want to approach the kingdom of heaven like a child, we too should do all of these things. And I want to draw your attention just to the fact that children are open to new spiritual and faith revelation. Sometimes we as adults approach Bible stories and worship and prayer with our baggage in our hands. We have our confirmation bias switched on. That means that we only look for things in the Bible text, in the worship, that back up what we believe. And that stops us getting fresh revelation from God, because all we're looking for is stuff that backs up what we believe. But if we come at the kingdom of God like a child, we are open to everything, all those new things that God is doing in our lives, that God is doing in our community, and that God wants to say to us. And so, as we approach our own faith journey, we should be like children and not like the Pharisees that Jesus criticizes. Because it's the Pharisees that do the opposite of being like a child. But we're not looking just for people to be part of a children's life in our church, because this is discipling families, and families are all the time. Because faith is for life. Faith is life, and it's not just on a Sunday morning. So if you didn't know, and why didn't you know this? The children and young people follow the same topics and Bible passages that the adults do in here. So, in theory, if you've got children, then you can go home and you can talk to them about what they did, and it should match up. It probably won't for the next 2 weeks. I apologize for that, but then we're back on. So it should match up. So if you go on the family resources part of our website, you will see this. You probably can't read it, but these are a few ideas that you can do at home with your children or young people that will help you draw out some of the things that you've all discovered on a Sunday morning. And they're not massive resources. They don't take a lot of time, but they will help you move what you've learned on a Sunday into your day-to-day life. And also, we're launching today this amazing thing called a Family Challenge booklet. All the children will get one of these. We're going to do this every couple of months. This is jam-packed with ideas that you can do at home if you've got children and young people. And that it will really help your family see their faith in action. And then you can come back and tell the story, give your testimonies about what God is doing through you and your family. So get your hands on this. Now, I mentioned that statistic of 50% earlier, and it was done by a group of people called the Fuller Youth Institute, and they wanted to find out what helped faith stick into adulthood, what helped children be part of this 50% who made it into their adulthood. And they produced this report called Sticky Faith. Again, this is a great book to read if you fancy it. And they came up with 4 conclusions. And they will all start with sticky, because we're Christians and we love that kind of thing. Sticky relationships, sticky gospel, sticky conversations, and sticky justice. We haven't got time to talk about them all, but what I want you to focus on here is the sticky relationships. Because they found that if you had, as a parent or carer, if you had a web of relationships around your children that was made up of 5 or more adults that weren't their parents, you then helped children experience faith in so many different ways and gave children so many different options to talk about their faith and see it in action, that it helped faith to stick into adulthood. So, example from my life, some pictures here. This is my mum and my dad, and that's my Auntie Judith. She's not my real auntie, mum and dad's friend. I come from Bolton in the northwest, and virtually everybody is either your auntie or uncle, even if they're not related to you. And my Auntie Judith's husband, Uncle Roy, sadly no longer with us, was also a key part of my upbringing. And then on the left, I think this is Millennium Eve. I told you I wasn't a cool teenager. I spent Millennium Eve with my parents and their friends. That is my mum's friend, Liz, also sadly no longer with us. But as I was growing up in church, my mum and dad had lots and lots of friends who also had children the same age as me, and I played with them and was friends with them. But I was also friends with my parents' friends, because they played a massive part in my life. We would meet up together, go to each other's houses. Sometimes we even went on holiday together. These families served together on children's and young people's holidays too. And as I saw they were just living their faith out, it taught me so much about what it meant to be a Christian. As I said, my Uncle Roy died, and he had a long time suffered with arthritis and had cancer for a long time. And I saw how these ordinary people, and ordinary is not a derogatory word at all, these ordinary people coped with those things, but also they saw their faith work out through all of these difficult situations. So let's come back to the Ugandan version of that saying. A child does not grow up only in a single house. So look around you. Look around you here. This community is full of so many diverse people who've got so many diverse experiences, and they can input into your family. So if you are a parent or carer, then try and think about how you can build the sticky web of relationships around your family. Because if you're struggling with for want of a better term, a rebellious teenager, there will be people in here who have gone through that and come out the other side. There will be people in here who 2 or 3 years ago were that rebellious teenager who can talk to your teenager about life, and they can help them work through whatever it needs to be that they work through. So, the whole church has a part to play in the spiritual upbringing and general upbringing of the children and young people in it. And if you're a parent and carer, you do not have to do this bringing up on your own. And if we just skip to the penultimate slide, of course, we should pray. We should pray for the young people in our families. We should pray for the young people and children that we, if we don't have, I don't have any children, that we have connections with. We should pray for the good times and the bad. We should always be praying for the children and the young people and the families in our church. Because we need to get involved, because families need you. Thank you. Sharon.